Hi, Shirley. It's good to see you. Good to see everyone. Shirley, I can't believe Jared's going to be graduating soon.
I know, one more month.
That's awesome.
And he says to say hi, by the way. He was just in my office not more than like 2 minutes ago. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I think he thought I was kidding when I said I'm about to see your mom. I think I kind of threw him for a loop a bit, but when he realized I wasn't kidding, he said to say hi.
Okay, funny.
All right. Okay. All right, I think we'll begin. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sandro Tejada, Director of Major Gifts and the Seton Hall Parents Program. At Seton Hall, as you probably know, we really value the important role parents play in their students' success. We also welcome parents as part of our bigger goal to build community and further enhance the student experience for everyone at Seton Hall. In my role, I work closely with parents around the country who are investing in our students' experience, making a difference for our students through their charitable giving, career connections, and community ambassadorship. Again, thank you for joining us for our virtual meeting with Dr. Courtney Smith, Dean of the School of Diplomacy and International Relations. Before we begin, just a little bit of housekeeping. Just please kindly mute yourself. And if you have any questions during the meeting, please use the live chat feature to share your questions. And we really want to hear from you. So please raise your hand, and when you're ready to ask your question, you could unmute yourself, which is on the top right hand of your screen to ask your questions during our Q&A session. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Courtney Smith, Dean of the School of Diplomacy and International Relations. He was appointed to the full-time role just last month, right, Courtney? And will also serve as the Vice Dean of Seton Hall Law, where he will assist with budget management and related matters. One of the School of Diplomacy's founding faculty members, Dean Smith began his academic career in 1999. He earned tenure and was promoted to associate professor in 2005. That year, he was appointed associate dean and subsequently became senior associate dean in 2014. He managed many aspects of the school's operations, from student recruitment to budget management, and agreed to serve as acting dean in August of 2019. And he has worked with schools, faculties, and administrators on several key initiatives, include the World Leaders Forum and partnership with the United Nations Association. Since he has assumed the role of acting dean, the school has launched a Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice Coalition comprised of 45 students, alumni, faculty members, and administrators. The coalition developed 3 new graduate and undergraduate courses on race, gender, and religion and international affairs, and launched the Black Diplomacy Student Organization, which was honored by the SGA, which is our Student Government Association, as the Astounding New Student Group last year. Additionally, the school is developing new collaborative programs with international partners, including an online mid-career graduate degree focused on international affairs and diplomatic practice with the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. Dean Smith is a strategic leader, as you can hear, with a sterling reputation among colleagues here and in the global diplomacy community. He has displayed exceptional devotion to the school and university over the past 23 years, including an ongoing commitment to empowering students to help build the school together. Please join me in welcoming Dean Smith.
So thank you, Sandro. And I think that was a very generous introduction, and the way you ended it, I think, is one of the things that makes me happiest about being in this role and having worked at the school for a while. It's the fact that we have great students, and when we empower them, they really rise to the occasion and respond. And I'm happy to give you some examples of them doing that. But what I appreciate Sandro for saying we could hold questions to the end. But as those of you who've heard me speak at a recruitment event before one of these sessions know, once I get going about the school, I can just keep going, and I really want it to be a conversation. So if you think of a question along the way, feel free to raise your hand or throw it in the chat, and I'm happy to take it as we go. I wanted to just highlight a couple of key things that we can elaborate on. But it all begins, I think, with the success of our students. It's a virtuous circle, if you will. The School of Diplomacy attracts really great students, and by great students, I could talk about many ways they're great. The two ways that I really have in mind are our students are academically excellent and they have strong leadership qualities. And when you put those two characteristics together, they make a great impact on the school, they make a great impact on our campus, and they make a great impact beyond that. And so it all begins with our students. Because we have great students, we can give them great opportunities. Because they do well in those opportunities, it creates opportunities for those students to come after them. So it's a nice virtuous circle. Many years ago when the school was created, we had no choice because we were small, but to empower our students. And now that we're larger and more established, in theory, we could do things differently. But why would we? It works out so effectively. And one example of that would be, Sandra mentioned our World Leaders Forums. We just had one the week before last with Linda Thomas Greenfield, who is the United States Ambassador to the UN. I hope some of you have been able to watch either watched it live or watched the video of the event. And I think it's emblematic of what the school means. The ambassador's team was adamant that it needed to be a fireside chat. You know, as a UN scholar, I would have been happy to talk with her for hours, but that's not how we operate at the School of Diplomacy. Instead, as you saw, there were 8 students up on stage, and they asked the questions. They guided the conversation, including some of your sons and daughters. I see Jarrett's mom on the screen right now. Jarrett was one of the students up on stage, and in fact, I think he asked the leadoff question, as I recall. So that's how we work at the School of Diplomacy. And that empowering our students really sets the stage for them to make a difference and succeed. My colleague Elizabeth Halpin is in the chat. She's in the quiet car on the train coming back from DC because we had a group of our graduate students present their policy proposals at the Pentagon this morning in the State Department this afternoon. That's part of our National Security Fellowship program, where this is our 5th group of students that get hired basically as a project team for a government client. And this year that client was the Bureau of Intelligence and Research at the State Department. And our students did a policy project on the U.S. policy toward Pakistan, given the fall of the fall of the Afghan government and the rise of the Taliban last summer. And because they do so well in this work, it's the 5th time they've done it. It's the 2nd time they've had the State Department in as a client. And every time they've done it, one presentation has turned into multiple presentations because one office will say, hey, this is really intriguing, very insightful, let's do it again. So our students are incredibly successful, and we really value them for that. I'm looking at the screen here, and a number of your children are in our leadership program, whether they're early, that Dean Halpin runs, whether they're early on or further along. They're developing project proposals. This Friday, a group of our leadership students is doing a training session for other diplomacy students to become leaders too. In other words, turnkeying what they're learning. You know, that is servant leadership, not just getting your own benefit out of a particular skill set that you've been given, but making sure you carry that forward, not only in your own behavior, but teaching others to do the same thing. And I think that really says something about the kind of students we have. I mentioned they're academically very strong. When you were recruited, you probably, when your children were recruited to our program, you probably heard me or Dean Sangiamino say that typically every fall, 60% of our students are on the dean's list, and every spring it's like 55%. Well, what's the figure from fall of 2021? 62%. What's the figure from spring of last spring a year ago? 55%. Our students are exceptionally strong. That means they are excelling not only in their diplomacy coursework, but every coursework they have on campus, all the coursework they have on campus. And it means they're going to graduate in honors, cum laude, magna cum laude, summa cum laude, because of the way they're performing. They're all leaders on our campus, not just in our leadership program, but also in organizations like the Global Current that just had an event down the hall. Our students reached out to a board member of the School of Diplomacy, David Brancaccio, who is the host of Marketplace on NPR. And what I love about the school is that our students are reaching out to one of our board members and hosting an event that I find out about the day of the event. On one level, I'm like, shoot, I wish I knew about it sooner. But on the other level, I'm like, that is totally cool that our students have that kind of relationship and that kind of reputation. And why did David Brancaccio agree to do that? Because Jarrett is one of the best interns he's ever had at Marketplace. Hands down, one of the best interns. And that means the next time one of our students wants to intern at Marketplace, what is David Brancaccio going to say? He's going to say, absolutely, I had the last student I had was great in this. So I just think it's a very virtuous way that these things carry on. As Sandro mentioned how our new Black Diplomacy Student Organization won the award for the best new student organization on campus last academic year. The student who founded that, Acacia, has been selected for a Wrangle Fellowship. A Wrangle Fellowship will pay for her graduate school and gives her a pathway program into the U.S. Department of State. And she's not the first Wrangle or Pickering or Payne that we've had, one of these pathway programs. And when I say that we've had, I mean our undergraduate students competing and getting those fellowships, and our School of Diplomacy hosting students that earn them at undergrads elsewhere and choose Seton Hall for their graduate component of that program. So in other words, we send Wrangles and we host Wrangles in Paynes and Pickerings. And I think that is a great way for our school to be helping to diversify the key offices of the U.S. government in the State Department and U.S. Agency for International Development, because one of the goals we've had over the last 2 years that has been led by Dean Halpern is our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice Coalition. And Sandro mentioned some of the main accomplishments of that in the introduction for me. We have 3 new classes running, and those are being offered at the graduate and undergraduate level. One is on race and international affairs, one is on gender and international affairs, and one is on religious identity and international affairs. 2 are running at the undergrad level this semester, 1 at the grad level, and next year we'll flip it. And the undergrad classes will be offered to grad students and the grad courses will be offered to undergrad. So that way it can permeate our entire student body. And these are courses that were developed based on the insights of our students and guided by our professors, and now are being offered in a very successful and effective way. And what this does is it further reinforces the fact that in order to have the diversity and the great benefit that is the diversity of our school carry on into the real world as our students graduate, we need to be connecting theory to practice with them while they're here. Right? That is the key at the School of Diplomacy. And I want to highlight that this means not only bringing theory into our classroom, and by that, how do we, or onto our campus? How do we do that? I mentioned the example with Linda Thomas Greenfield last week. Well, the week before that, we had Nobel Peace Prize laureate Lema Bowie doing a conversation with our students as well, as part of a whole series of events that our Center for Peace and Conflict Studies has done on women, peace, and security. Women, peace, and security is a major UN agenda. It goes back to a famous UN resolution 1325 that was passed 22 years ago. And so this speaker series was an effort to take stock of that. And Lema Bowie was our well, there was actually an event in that speaker series on Monday, but before that, she was our most recent event. And she spoke to over 100 students virtually about her work in not only bringing the Liberian Civil War to an end, and that's how she, for which she was awarded the Peace Prize, but then in the long-term, rebuilding that has to take place so society doesn't relapse into conflict. In terms of building institutions, building the economy, and building social structures that respect the rights of all citizens, including especially women and children. So students are hearing from these world leaders on our campus. They're also interacting with them. I mentioned the program that Elizabeth was accompanying our students today that we're presenting at state. That's guided by one of our professors of practice named Mo Migahari. And he's not our only professor of practice this semester. We have a professor of practice, Raja Talia, who is guiding that Women, Peace, and Security Initiative program. We have a professor of practice leading our program in Washington, D.C. that some of your sons and daughters may have done at one point or maybe thinking about doing in the future. So these are efforts, again, to connect theory to practice by having them interact with people on our campus. But it doesn't end there. We're sending our students off into high-profile internships, and they're doing very well in those internships. These internships are leading our students on to careers. We did a career survey with the last 2 years worth of graduating students. And what we found is that we have a number of our students that go straight on to graduate school. That's usually about 15% a year. But if you add in the students that are in one of our dual degree programs, like some of your children, meaning they're earning our graduate, undergraduate, and graduate degree, or our undergraduate degree and the law degree, the JD, that means that number can be as high as 30% in any graduating class. But of the ones that go straight out to work, we're finding like about half of our students are going into the nonprofit sector. Okay, these would be civil society organizations that are working on behalf of change. And I think there's a couple reasons why half of our students are going in that direction. One is that there are just a lot of these organizations and they tend to be very small. And so they need a lot of help. And it's an excellent first job because the organizations are small, our graduates, our alumni, when they work in them, really get a lot of experience quickly, both at the headquarters and in the field. What I like to say is they become a Jack or Jill of all trades because they're doing a lot of different things. And that sets themselves up for their next job, which, although some students go straight into these sectors, might be with the government. 30% of our undergraduate students end up there. And then in the private sector, it's about 20%. And so it's showing how, because of the connection of theory and practice, they are all very interconnected together. And Mrs. McGuire asked, how do we get the speakers for the forums? And that can be in a lot of different ways. We secured Linda Thomas Greenfield because of our DEIJ coalition. We had actually invited her to speak before she was named U.S. Ambassador to the UN, so this would have been 18 months ago. We have a connection. One of our board members works at Stonebridge Albright, which is the consulting firm the late Secretary of State Madeleine Albright founded, and Linda Thomas Greenfield worked there as well. In between her prior government service and her current position, she agreed to come. We were trying to settle on a date, and lo and behold, Biden won, and it was clear that LTG, as we call her, was going to get nominated for a position. So students suggested her because of our diversity coalition. We had a connection and made that happen. Lima Bowie was a slightly different route. We invited her to speak back in 2014. She came. She was excited about what she saw. So her daughter enrolled in our graduate program and completed it. And then we were looking for ways to engage. And her U.S. Foundation has hosted 12 of our students as interns over the past 7 or so years since 2014. And it was one of our board members late last spring that said we should really move her onto the board. And not only is she now becoming a member of our board of advisors, but she's also going to serve as one of our professors of practice, one of our visiting scholars next academic year. So the session that she did with our students just a little bit ago was just the tip of the iceberg in terms of that. So we're always looking for ways to bring international affairs to our campus. But that's not all we're doing. We're trying to send our students out there, like I mentioned, through the internship programs. We're also doing that through study abroad. I know one of the sets of parents here has a daughter who was really set on taking advantage of a new exchange program that we've set up with one of the most prestigious international affairs programs in the Russian Federation. That would be the Moscow State. Hey, there you are. Hi, Mr. Amalan. So Sasha was diehard, very interested in going to MIMO, as we call it. And we are getting ready to set up an information session for our students getting ready to go there, for their students getting ready to come here. And unfortunately, Russia invaded Ukraine. So that partnership will be on hold because we don't send students to places that are on the State Department travel advisory list. And that is most certainly true for the Russian Federation right now. The good news is Sasha has a little bit more time with us. So hopefully we can get that back on track. The Secretary General was in Moscow yesterday. He will be in Kiev tomorrow. So hopefully we can get maybe that'll get some traction on the peace talks again. I wish I was more optimistic this week than I am last week, but with the fighting intensifying in Donbass, will get me on a big tangent if I go there. What I want to say is we feel that study abroad is very popular. Dean Sangiamino has been working with a lot of students just over the last few weeks. We even hope to restart our own study abroad programs that were put on pause with COVID for this coming academic year. So look for us to have announcements, hopefully about 1 or 2 programs that would be spring courses that would travel either over spring break or right in May, right after the semester ends. So to get our own programs back up and running now that that's more feasible. We have other partnerships that are available for our undergraduate students. One that we have our first set going for next year is a program that's an undergrad degree in diplomacy here from us, and a graduate degree from the Graduate Institute of International Development Studies in Geneva. Which if you've been to Geneva, perhaps you visited the Palais des Nations, where the UN is based there. Like 3 minutes from there is the Graduate Institute's buildings. And it's a perfect location. And so how this works is our students do 3 years with us. They in the 3rd year, they apply to the Graduate Institute. They get accepted. We had 4 students apply. We're allowed to have 3 in the program. 3 got accepted. It looks like at least one I know for sure is going. The other 2 are trying to figure it out. In fact, the one who's going was in my office yesterday evening, one of our student leaders. And that he will spend the fall of his junior year in Geneva. He'll come back for the spring of his senior year and graduate with his undergraduate degree from us. And then he'll go back to the Graduate Institute for 1 more year of grad study, which means he'll get the graduate degree that would have taken 2 years in a 1.5 years of study. And one of those half semesters was also counting for us. So it's really only 1 year instead of 2. So a great program with that. So we have a lot of opportunities to do activity like that. Guiding your children through their experience are some really dedicated faculty. And I have to just say a few minutes ago, or before the Global Current used our room down the hall to talk with our board member, David Brancaccio, we had one of our professors doing a capstone experience for her undergraduate students this semester. And on the way in, she dropped off a nice card and a present for me. And I unwrapped it. And what's in the package but her 4th book, 4th book on energy politics in the former Soviet Union. And this is someone who has been in the news hundreds of times, not only since the invasion, but also in all the back and forth in the lead up to the invasion, going it through, December and January. And she's only one of, I think, 4 of our professors who've been quoted just on this topic alone. So our professors are very good at engaging theory and practice. We have another book that came out this year that was on toxic politics and health and governance in China. That Professor Yangzhang Huang has been interviewed over 250 times in the media during COVID pandemic. And another professor right now this semester has a book coming out on participatory budgeting in Latin America and has been presenting both at academic conferences and to government workshops on participatory budgeting and what it means for Latin America and beyond. So our faculty are very much interested in connecting theory to practice. What this means is there are very concrete ways in which we're calling on our alumni and all of our other supporters to help create opportunities for our students. We, as you know, have a required internship program. That's because internships can be done here locally if a student wants to. And so there's a very modest cost involved in those, really a train ticket in and out of New York City. But but some students want to go elsewhere for their internships. So we do have a small fund that helps support the cost of internships. For instance, we have 2 dedicated internships programs in Geneva, and that's not a particularly inexpensive place to live. So it's nice to be able to help the students with living expenses. Same thing with study abroad. We don't require study abroad because by definition, you can't do it locally like you could an internship. So study abroad always has some sort of cost. And the trick is that the cost varies depending on how much scholarship support here the student has, whether they're going on a Seton Hall program or a third-party program, and where that program is located. And since there's so many variations in cost, we are trying to build up more resources to help our students pay for study abroad. Because if it was financially a wash, we would be inclined probably to require it. And so the more that we can make that accessible, that's something that we hope is strongly supported during Giving Day, today and tomorrow, and even beyond that through our other campaigns. Other things that you've heard us talk about before, I just mentioned the National Security Fellowship Program. The group of students that does that is a group of graduate students. But we have a somewhat similar program that is solely for undergraduate students, and that's called our Diplomacy Lab. And this is a project by which our students can work directly with a professor, have very policy relevant research, and then publish that research. And so last year we had 2 of our undergraduate students published an article with one of our professors in Foreign Policy magazine, which is the 2nd ranked foreign policy publication there is in the United States, second only behind Foreign Affairs. And one of the students that published in that, both ended up graduating early, by the way. They both graduated in December, so in 3.5 years. And one of them used her writings that were done through Diplo Lab, not only in foreign policy, but also in the Washington Post and elsewhere, to secure her first job as an undergraduate student at the Center for International Studies in Washington, D.C. Yeah, that is an amazing job. And to get it as a fresh, just a recent graduate out of an undergraduate program is unheard of. I mean, it's just frankly amazing. Very, very impressive. So we have these excellent students. What we'd like to do is be able to have even more students participate in Diplo Lab. But the real challenge is the fact that we need funding for the students, not really for anything else, but for the students, because they're doing extra work, and we would like to be able to compensate them for that work. It's a great experience, great resume builder. I mean, it helped Harshan to get that job, but if it's uncompensated, only certain students can do it because some of our students need to work while they're studying here. And so in order to make this a wide open opportunity, a more widely available opportunity, and one that's more equitably available, we're trying to generate resources so we can pay, so we can hire the students, treat them as employees or give them scholarships, somehow, compensate them for their time that they're devoting to developing these research skills. It's a great problem to have when you have such accomplished students that they're writing things that appear in Foreign Policy magazine, that they get noticed by the staff of Senator Menendez, the senior senator from New Jersey, the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, whose staff, because we got on their radar screen again through the work of our students in Diplo Lab, is now planning on doing an event at Seton Hall School of Diplomacy where he'll announce a major piece of legislation focused on Latin America as soon as it gets out of committee. So our students are not only creating opportunities for their colleagues on campus, they're creating opportunities for the whole school. I just think that's a great testament to the quality of our students. Like I said, I could go on and on and on about how awesome it is to be at the School of Diplomacy, to have the opportunity to spend with all of the wonderful students that you send us. But I would much rather hear from you and elaborate on any of the points I've made or anything else you'd like to talk about regarding the School of Diplomacy.
Yes, please feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself, and ask any questions that you might have.
Please, Ms. Heller.
Hi, congrats on your new job, officially heading up the department and everything else you do. I have a freshman boy who calls home when he can and he's having a great time. But I feel really out of things. I say things like, oh, did you hear when you should be doing internships? And he's like, not freshman year. And I said, okay, cool. But when is an appropriate time for a Seton Hall diplomacy student to go out and seek that? And I have to say, Dr. Ruby was such a selling point for us. So are there people just like her or almost as good as her able to help the student plan if they just walk in? So that's lots of questions. Sorry.
So he's your son is right that he wouldn't be doing the internship as a freshman, but he's not off the hook yet. Okay. The question is he meeting with Dr. Ruby to figure out how to build the right resume so that he'll get a really strong internship later? Yeah. We mentioned that we have students that have exceptional leadership skills, whether they get that through the leadership program that Dean Halpin runs or whether they get it through their work through student organizations. The key is that they need to be strategic. You know, some students are interested in a lot of different things, and it's one thing to be a member of, like, I don't know, 10 different student organizations. It would be much better to pick 2, and really develop a leadership role in them. So that way you have, you know, for instance, I'm the advisor for the Model UN team that just spent last weekend at a conference in LA. Okay. I'm the advisor, but I didn't pick LA. I didn't plan LA. I didn't do anything related to LA other than to sit down with the students, to hear their ideas, to ask them questions, you know, not the Spanish Inquisition, but just to ask them questions to see, you know, what they're doing, how they're going to do it. So that way they do it. So he needs to be getting involved on campus, looking for leadership roles to emerge, talking to Dr. Ruby during the freshman year. So he's right that he doesn't need to get an internship this year, but that doesn't mean he's off the hook. So if you want a good rebuttal to say, yes, but you should be doing X, Y, and Z, there's your ammunition. When he should be doing them depends on whether he's going to do 1 or 2. Because he has to do 1, he could do a second internship. If he's only going to do 1, I would probably wait till junior or senior year. If he's going to do 2, I'd get 1 in the sophomore year and use that as a springboard to get an even more prestigious one in the junior or senior year. And whether he's doing 1 or 2 internships will hinge on his interests, whether or not he's studying abroad, because if he's studying abroad, we'll count that in place of the second internship, and which degree program he's in. If he's in our 4-year program, he really should be thinking about 2 internships or study abroad or something like that. If he's in our 5-year, our BSMA program or the 3+3, he's going to be doing something hands-on at the grad level too. Like, in other words, the BSMA are going to do an undergrad internship and a grad internship. So he has then he'd have a little bit more flexibility. The 3+3 students are going to do an internship with us and then probably like a clerkship or a summer placement or something like that while they're in law school. So they'll by definition will get a grad in an undergrad kind of hands-on experience thing.
And
Courtney,
since I was going to say, since you mentioned it, the master's and undergrad in diplomacy, it's the 3x2, I guess. When does the student when's the drop dead where they can say, I want to do that? Because he wasn't thinking about it before he got there. They could have decided as an incoming freshman, but if they didn't, no worry at all. In the fall of his junior year would be when he should apply. Okay. And then he would know by the spring of his junior year. He'll know quicker than that, but he'll certainly know in the spring of his junior year when he starts registering for classes in year 4. And that's when we really need to know, because his years 1 and 2 will be very similar, whether he's, whichever program he's doing. Year 3 starts to deviate a little bit. So when he's planning his junior year classes, it'd be good to just let his advisor know that, hey, I'm thinking about the BSMA program. So we make sure he plans his classes accordingly. And then certainly in his junior year, we're going to, by the time he registers for senior year, he'll know. Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
Courtney, I do have a follow-up to that specific point in regards to dual degree programs. Have you seen an increase in the number of students interested in dual degree programs, the 3+2 and the 3+3, especially with incoming freshmen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one, so we've had the 5-year program, the 3+2, 4+1, whatever you call it, the BSMA. We've had that for like 20 years. And so that'll ebb and flow a little bit. We've made it more structured. We've made it more streamlined. So we do have more students that come in interested in doing that than we did in the past, because we tried to make it more efficient and better for the students. And I think students are also thinking a little bit more strategically about long-term things. For the 3+3, that's a relatively new program, you know, we've only had that a few years. So it's really this year that our first 3+3 students, you know, are in the 1L at law school. You know, so we you know, it's much more recent. But there are each year, the 3+3 is one of our most popular programs right now. What we do find, though, however, and I say this just to allay any concerns, you know, that your sons or daughters may have if they're second guessing things, is, you know, things look one way when you're 17 or 18 and maybe different by the time you're 19, 20, 21. So whatever of these accelerated programs they may have entered, if they have any second thoughts at all, we can always transition them back to the 4-year program. It's always possible. Usually students realize that by junior year, because that's when they would start either the graduate coursework or they'd be preparing for year 4, which if they're in the 3+3 will be entirely the 1L experience down at the law school. There will be no coursework on the main campus. And so they really need to decide by that junior year. But if they decide in that junior year, we can easily have them switch. We'll have them graduate on time. In fact, a lot of the 3+3 students that switch to the 4-year program are graduating in 3.5 years because they're so organized and ahead of the game. Sometimes they're switching into the 5-year. You know, they'll go from the 3+3 to our BSMA. But a lot of times they are, you know, they decide they don't want to do law school, at least not immediately. Or maybe they want to go to law school, but just not necessarily at Seton Hall Law. And so as a result, they figure I might as well get out in 3.5 years because I have the credits to do so. That gives me some extra time to maybe get some work experience, maybe study extra hard for the LSATs, whatever it is. You know, save some tuition money, obviously, in that spring, and then, you know, parlay it into, you know, whatever's next for them. So we do see an uptick in those programs. But we are very conscious of the fact that even though it's in our interest, the school and the university, to have them stay here for graduate study, that's ultimately not what every student's going to decide to do. And we do make it very easy for them to switch if they change their mind and get out of here on time with the 4-year degree. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you hear any second thoughts like that, send them our way. We'll help them out, explore all their options. And trust me, I have a daughter who's in college right now, and she's on track to graduate a little early. She's going through the same thing right now. Do I want to graduate early? Do I want to like add a couple extra minors or something like that and graduate on time? Or do I want to start like a grad program at her university where they can accelerate her through? And her real decision point will probably come this summer before she goes into her junior year, because that'll impact her junior year coursework. So I get exactly where you are. Not only can I sympathize, I can empathize. You know, I live it on a daily basis.
Shirley?
Yeah, Shirley, please.
I just want to, first of all, say thank you really to all of you at the School of Diplomacy. You know, Jared's had an amazing 4 years. Everyone has been extremely supportive, really, even from before we committed. We were on campus to tour. We met with Dean San Gemino. She sat down, answered our questions. He wasn't even a student yet, you know. But it meant just all throughout, you know, just all the support from all the deans, you know, Dean Halpin, Dean Smith. Everyone's just been amazing. I wanted
well,
to.
This is going to be a joke, but, you know, we like him so much, too. So we could arrange, you know, that maybe he has an issue in one of his last minute classes so he could stay around, you know. But no, I'm kidding. But
yeah. Thank you. But I wanted to just kind of address Nicole's internship and her son's question. So, yeah, I get it. You know, they're young. They don't really know what to do. So sometimes I do have the nurture and guidance going on. And, you know, internships, you know, we can't just really 100% rely on the school to hand them, you know, this opportunity. So a lot of it also has to be on you. So Jared actually is on his 3rd internship. I'm not saying it's necessary. It's just that the first summer he was home. So he had nothing to do anyway. He was, 18? And so he was able to find an internship at the Red Cross in LA. So it's local. He did drive there, you know, in downtown LA traffic. It's crazy, but you know, that looks good on the resume, right? And they gave him a lot of experience. And he was on the spring of sophomore year when he had an internship at the US UN. So that one for government sites, you know, you kind of set alerts for yourself, and hopefully your son would be interested in doing that for himself. Is, you know, these deadlines for government jobs are super early. The internships are very early. So you get it in, like he had to pick 2 agencies he was interested in, and, you know, submit his resume, answer all the questions. And, you know, he got called for both of them. And he had phone interviews. And, you know, when he got an offer, you know, he had to go through background check. They sent someone, an officer to campus to interview him at the Cove. And, you know, it was a full-time internship. It was not easy. He had to shuffle all his courses to where he's just doing the minimum 12 courses, one of which was the internship, because he had to go into the city and, you know, like go in the city, take the train, take the subway, or walk really far to the UN. But, you know, it was worth it. But, and halfway through it, at least he was able to do maybe 70%, 80% in person, and COVID happened. So if he hadn't done it in his sophomore year, he probably wouldn't have that opportunity, you know, to do it again in person, like during his time at school. And now he's doing the marketplace internship, which is paid. Like the others were unpaid, you know, that's normal. And hopefully the last internship is something that's going to help, you know, secure a job, you know, kind of as a transition. So that's what's happened for Jared, which we're very grateful for.
And we're all grateful to you for running the parent group for so long on Facebook. So I know a lot of us live for your wisdom. So thank you, Shirley.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And if I can just say, that's again the reason to be in contact with Dr. Ruby early, because different internships have different timelines, and as Shirley indicated, US-UN, because it involves a background. I mean, that's a State Department internship. That's the U.S. mission to the UN. Sorry. That involves a background check. So that's something that you're applying for. You know, the deadline is early fall for the following summer, for example. You know, it's like 9-10 months out, but not all are that way.
Denise, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there a Facebook group just for the diplomacy parents? Because I'm in the Facebook group for like the Seton Hall parents, the, you know, the overall school, but is this a separate one or no? No? Same one?
It's not the one that's run by the school. It's another parents one that's not run by the school, but it's not specific to diplomacy. It's just, it's all the parents, and it's,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I do subscribe to the diplomacy Facebook page, and that's where I learn who's coming to campus before my son does. So, so there's that one if you haven't found that yet.
Too, yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, and we're also on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram also, that you can follow, where we'll announce our events. You can also go to the news and events page on the diplomacy website and set up an alert for yourself if you'd like. We send everything out to students once a week through an e-news, and so they get that on Monday, so you can always ask them, yo, hey, anything interesting in e-news? I think it's really cool when, you know, every now and then it happened with my, you know, I did that with my son or daughter when they were at school. I was on social media and I saw something. I said, hey, are you going to this, or did you go to that? And a couple times it made a good difference. You know, I think one of my children went because I was the extra little push. And at least in one of my son's cases, it ended up being one of the things that he was most active in as an undergrad, and it's one of the things that helped him get his first job when he graduated, because he went to that one information session that I happened to forward to him. I think he would have seen it anyway. I mean, he subscribes to the same thing, but students are busy, you know, and they, you know, sometimes things can fall through the cracks. So I think just the fact that I resent it to him, you know, helped a little bit. So I applaud that. I think parents can play just a key little push here or there, you know, it's great. Yeah. Mark?
Yes, to that end, actually, so I don't get shut down out of hand. Sasha is going to an internship this summer in New Zealand, and she's taken 6 credit hours. So she's going to finish a semester early. So do you think that there's some way that she could parlay that into this Geneva program? She's a sophomore now. That's going to be her sophomore summer. That master's degree in Geneva, that sounds like a great program, but I want to understand it all before I present it to her.
Oh, sure.
possible.
And I should actually congratulate Sasha. She's a great example of someone who takes what she's doing in the school and goes and then presents it at the UN last summer. I just think that's
Right.
totally cool.
And
So,
again, this spring she did it as well. She's done it twice now.
oh, that's awesome.
She's
That's great.
representing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with all her downtime when she's not, representing the university through the golf team, I mean,
Yeah,
our
that's right.
our kids have so much free time, our students. But so the reality is that the program with Geneva is designed to be efficient, like an accelerated program. So
Mhm.
they do 3 years with us. They do 1 semester in Geneva, 1 semester here, and then 2 more semesters in Geneva. So she's already a semester ahead if she's going to graduate a semester early.
Mhm.
So she may not actually need the accelerated program. In other words, if she goes, she will be done and wouldn't need that 8th semester back here. So
Okay.
we would need to map out where she is in her curriculum and see whether it would make more sense for her to slow things down and do try and take advantage of this dedicated program we have, or just accelerate through,
Graduate early, fly there.
and just go then do their grad program. We've actually had some students, excuse me, who it's more of because they come in with a lot of AP and other things like that, they don't need the undergraduate waivers that they would get from the graduate coursework. Whether it's our own graduate degree, or I think the same will be true with the one in Geneva, because they just don't need it. They have so many AP classes, they do extra things in the summer, they're not getting any waivers, in which case doing the combined degree doesn't make any sense. Just get the undergrad degree done as quickly as possible, and then the grad degree done. That's actually the route I chose as an undergrad. I could have slowed down, but I knew I was going to go to grad school, or I thought I would most likely end up in grad school. So I graduated my undergrad as quickly as possible. So that's a conversation that Sasha wants to have. I know Dean Sanjamino will be happy to have it with her, and I'd be happy to be a second opinion, because it'd be easy to map that out for her.
Perfect. All right. That's what I'll recommend. Thank you.
Really, what we need to know, I mean, Mark, if you wanted to tell her to start looking at it, what we're gonna look at is how she's fulfilling her free electives on her advising worksheet.
Oh,
And if
she's
all
double
her electives are
majoring
already
in
filled through New Zealand
double
and
majoring
and
in
stuff like that,
economics and minoring in Russian. So that's what she's doing with her extra stuff.
so the minor in Russian won't fill any of her free electives because those are actually in her curriculum.
Wonderful.
And the economics might. So that's what we
Okay.
need to look at. And the
Okay.
more that those free electives, the closer she is already to 120, then there's nothing nothing to waive with the graduate credits that she get. So she might as
Oh,
well
I
get
see.
the
I got it.
undergrad degree. And as much as we'd like to again have her stay around, have her move on and keep and do
She
whatever
wants
she
to go
wants.
to MGMOs, and that may not happen. So we're trying to think of something consoling that she could do. I think the Geneva degree might be even better than going to MGMO in a way.
Well, I mean, the only thing is I've been to Moscow twice, and, in between I wasn't allowed to go because Yeltsin had the audacity to shell the Russian parliament building. So my university told me I couldn't go.
I was in
My parents told
Moscow
me I
at the
couldn't
Radisson
go.
when it happened.
But then, so what I then did, Mark, was I went ahead and finished my undergraduate degree. And instead of going through an exchange program, I found a way to travel abroad through one of those work programs. I did something called Robotava Imя Mira, which was kind of like it's piecework, like an international Habitat for Humanity, and it allowed me to spend a summer in Moscow. I wasn't paying for credits, but I was using my Russian language all the time.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's cool.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways to get creative when, when one door shuts, maybe another one opens. And
yeah,
I'm not sure how long this travel to Russia will be problematic, but the other thing to say is, even while she's a student here, and I say this to you rather than her, because you can decide whether or not to tell her this, is we're telling her Seton Hall's not letting her go. And we're not going to let her bring any credits from any university in Russia back here because Russia's on the travel advisory list.
Right.
That's our policy. Whether or not she goes to Russia on her own and does something else has nothing to do with Seton Hall. That has everything to do with you all. So that's a family decision, not a Seton Hall decision.
Thank you. That's a good idea. Thank you. All right. Appreciate it.
And as a parent, I would rather have someone tell me that before they tell my child that.
No, you're right. We have talked about it. I mean, the consulate is a friend here, so we could get her a Russian visa, no problems, whether we want to do it or not.
Yeah, you just won't be able to
Russian.
allow
We
her
don't
to
know
have
how
any
it's going
credit.
to escalate here. Yeah. I was at the Radisson Hotel across the street from the White House when the tanks rolled in. When I got
were
a
you?
call and said, let's go to the airport. I could see it from, you know how it's across the bridge. I could
Yep.
see it from my hotel room. It was crazy.
Yeah, no, I
times.
went in 89, wanted to go in 91. My university said, no, go to Helsinki instead. I said, no, thank you. I graduated early, and then I went back in the summer of 92. So
That's great. All right. It was a great time back then. It was a Wild West.
Yep.
For sure. Thank you.
Well, I just want to make sure that we keep this time integrity. I know we've a little over our time period, but if there's another parent that has another question or concern, we could take one more. And Courtney, if you have some final comments you want to
no,
share.
I'm happy to stay. If you have additional questions, I'm happy to stay
Yeah,
as long as you want. I really don't mind. I mean,
Okay.
this is, I love bragging about our students.
I have a question for you, Courtney. What has been the most challenging part of your job when you were the acting dean, now in your new role as the dean of the School of Diplomacy? I mean, you've shared all the wonderful things, but I'd imagine there are some challenges that is in that role that you sit in right now.
Well, I think the challenge, Sandra, would be the confluence of events that have happened. I became acting dean rather unexpectedly in summer 2019. So we entered a transition that we weren't necessarily expecting to have. In the middle of that transition, we were hit by a pandemic. And the pandemic then creates additional pressures on us through this day regarding budget, regarding the stress on the physical and emotional stress on our students, on our faculty and staff. I mean, just everything that you all are experiencing in your own lives. But the confluence of the three was the challenge, and the way and I think the thing that made it really navigable for me was the fact of the team we have here at the School of Diplomacy. And by that, I mean our faculty were very adept at shifting to new course delivery formats on short notice. I mean, our administrative staff that learned out how to work remotely, learned how to engage students, shift open advising, which is highly effective at the school, from in-person to Teams, so many examples. And our students. I mean, our students were incredibly versatile. And I really saw this last year, not this year, certainly, but last academic year when they were allowed on campus, but there weren't a huge, there were some here, but not everybody. But let me just give one example. So when I was put in the acting role, that freed up an office. And a number of colleagues said, oh, I should move across into the hall into what used to be the dean's office. But that is a student lounge. And we made that decision, and right as we got it ready to go as a student lounge was in March 2020. The pandemic hit, we sent students home. So the following year, we weren't really allowed to necessarily do anything with the student lounge because students were on campus, but with social distancing and workflow and stuff, we weren't supposed to encourage a lot of congregating. So it was the first morning of day one of the fall semester this academic year that I finally got to send out an email to students that the lounge was ready. In 20 minutes, 2 students were over here asking where it was. A half an hour later, there were 3 more students in it. Most nights when I leave, I cannot lock the door because there are still students in it. And so I asked them to shut it for me. And I know there's students in it right now because I can hear them across the hall. So I think that's great. That shows that, how much the students have played a role in getting us through this this experience. So I think it's just the transition, the pandemic, all of that at the same time, but having the right team of people around you, students included, has allowed the school to not only move through it, but I think to really continue an upward trajectory. I think there's a lot of evidence that we've not only survived, but we've thrived in a lot of areas. Not in every area. I mean, we have challenges, but we've thrived during the pandemic. I mean, during all these transitions that we had. Yeah.
Thank you, Courtney. I know there's 2 raised hands. Renee
Yeah,
and Tom.
please. Yeah. I'm
Dr.
not sure who was first.
I think it was Renee and Tom, if you want to
Okay.
unmute yourself.
Okay, I just had a quick question. Our daughter Sydney's in her 3rd year there. And I'm just wondering if she were able to procure an internship here in Canada, would she be able to use that to count toward her requirements?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So the only restriction on where you can do an internship and get credit from us is, again, the State Department travel advisory. And Canada is certainly not on a State Department travel advisory. So that is fine. The only thing is that if she's more than welcome to find an internship on her own. It doesn't have to be one that we already have. She will just need to work with Dr. Ruby to make sure that it meets the professional development criteria that we have. We just want students doing something that gives them professional skills, not something that's more like a high school summer job.
Okay.
Yeah. So that,
I mean, not that
and it has
she's
to be
probably going to end up
150
staying
hours
there.
over the summer. That, that's not too hard. It doesn't have to be full-time like Jarrett's was. USUN internships are full-time, but that's not a requirement. That's just what USUN specifies. So we worked with Jared to make it happen, but that's certainly not the requirement. It's 150 hours across the, the summer or the semester.
So 150 hours is the requirement?
Correct.
For an internship?
To get academic credit for the internship.
Okay.
If they do other internships on their own, that's whatever they're comfortable doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like she
My
probably
daughter's
won't come
doing a
home for
placement
the
this
summer?
semester that she's getting credit for, so her university sets the hours. This summer, she's continuing with that same organization in a different role, and that's completely between my daughter and the organization because she's not doing it for credit anymore.
Okay. All right. Hopefully she can find something there because I don't think she'll be coming home for the summer anyway. So.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
You're welcome. And let's see.
Kathy, would you like to unmute yourself?
Sorry.
Yes, good evening. I have a couple questions. One of them is, along with Renee, our daughter, Margaret Hope, is looking to get an internship perhaps in North Carolina with either the House or the Senate. Would that go along towards getting her credit at school?
Absolutely. We have students do political placements all the time, whether they be local congressmen or Senate officers like at the state level, whether they're a U.S. senator or a U.S. House of Representatives member, either in the district office or in D.C. Where, though, again, it's all about what the responsibilities are. Are they professionally relevant? Is it robust enough? And so as long as it meets that criteria, that location will be absolutely fine.
Wonderful, great. And the other question I have is more about the Model UN team you were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
You said you had a team that went to LA. Is that something they do when they get into the upper grades? Or is that
Oh no, they
something
can join the Model UN team right away. In fact, we have 2 different Model UN groups that collaborate together. One is a team that goes and competes at conferences that other colleges host. Okay, and that's the group I referenced earlier. We have another group that there is overlap that build and design and implement a conference here for high school students. So one group is about going and competing at other conferences and being a delegate. The other group is focused on learning the skills to run and organize and chair a conference. They're slightly different skill sets, but I think they're incredibly complementary. And so some students a lot of students do both, but there's no requirement to do both. So there's 2 ways to get involved in Model UN, and they can do it right out the gate as a freshman.
Wonderful. And then finally, I must have misunderstood. I thought Dr. Ruby was not coming back, or that she's been out of state.
No. What happened is that Dr. Ruby got promoted. And so what we're doing is we're hiring someone else to come in and be our director of internships and career development, but Dr. Ruby's still very much with us. Dr. Ruby will be training the new person into that role, and we're doing those interviews right now. So she most certainly is not gone, and she is still doing all of the internship stuff right now. And we would never want to lose Dr. Ruby. She will always be here. Well, hopefully always be here with us. She's certainly not going anywhere now. She's not in the same, she's moved across the hall with the promotion. So maybe the student went by and saw that the office door was shut, but she's directly across the hall and 2 doors down, so she's now an assistant dean rather than a director. So we promoted.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
I may have misunderstood then. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we emailed the students back when this happened. I guess it was in late February, and so there could be some confusion, but it takes a little while right now, as you know, to replace people. And so we're doing the interviews for the. So right now, Dr. Ruby is working extra long hours, helping with both roles. But it was a reward to her for a job well done. Very well deserved.
Great, thank you. And I know that our daughters have been receiving a lot of help from the staff, and it's an excellent staff you have in that department. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree with you completely about the quality of the staff. They've been here all of them have been here for a long time. I mean, when you hire a professor, you think a professor will be here, they'll get tenure, and they'll be here for a long time. You kind of expect that. With administrative staff at a university, there can be significant turnover, and we are incredibly fortunate in the School of Diplomacy that that we don't have to do administrative hiring very often. You know, we're just truly very blessed. Well,
it's a great department. Thank you.
I will add that too. Yeah, Dr. Ruby is another amazing resource. Just everyone really has been so helpful. Like, not just helping like identify internships, but even she'll do. I mean, Jared always he's not shy about asking for help. Like, can you please read my cover letter? Can you, I have this essay, like to submit for an application. Can you look at it? So everyone's just been super helpful. No one ever says no, and very responsive and quick to turn around.
Thank you. That's great to hear. Yeah.
Any other questions, concerns that you would like to share before we conclude this virtual meeting?
It looks like a hand just went up.
Yeah, Nicole?
Yeah, Nicole, thank you.
I had a little list of questions. I'm like, might as well. Can you describe the research centers, like the global health studies? What is that, and when do students get involved in that?
So we have 4 research centers. The oldest is the one on global health. That's been around for not quite 20 years yet. The main activity of the Center for Global Health is to publish a journal called Global Health Governance. It's an online academic journal. And so if students are interested in helping with that, they can go talk to Dr. Yangjong Wang, who heads it. He teaches our global health courses. If your son's a freshman, he probably hasn't had class with Dr. Wang yet, because he does teach an undergraduate course each semester, but it tends to be one students might take a little bit later on, just because one's on basically bioterrorism, global health and bioterrorism, and the other one's usually on U.S.-China relations. And so students sometimes take those a little bit later on. Another center we have is on UN and global governance studies. And the students that get involved in that often tend to be our model UN students, or are the students who are active in our campus chapter of the United Nations Association. They're probably interested in issues like the UN Sustainable Development Goals and things like that. And one of the cool things through that center is that the School of Diplomacy, as part of our UN status, can have 2 students have passes. Now, those passes, mind you, just for truth in advertising, those passes have been suspended during COVID, and the UN is only slowly restoring them. So the passes don't exist right now, but when they're restored, we will have a one, and we've always had a grad and undergrad student in them, and students apply and they hold them for maybe a semester, and then we rotate them. So that's something that you can do through that center. Our Center for Foreign Policy Studies is a very much oriented toward conversation about critical foreign policy issues, and they've been running a discussion group where they get together and talk about current issues like, of course, Ukraine, but not limited to that, and what are the foreign policy positions of various countries. It's a comparative foreign policy center, not just a U.S. foreign policy center. So that's a way to get involved in that center. And then our Center for Peace and Conflict Studies is probably right now the center that is most active with a wide range of programming. And its programming really falls into two areas. One is U.S.-China dialogue that started on the dispute in the South China Sea and has now become more COVID focused, as you can imagine. But there is that's funded by the Luce Foundation and multi-year grant. The other activity of the center is focused on the Middle East and North Africa, and that involves projects in Libya, Yemen, and Syria. And just so you are aware, the students that have helped with that center and have traveled to the region have gone to Amman, Jordan, not to Yemen, Syria, or Libya, just to be clear. And that's been like project implementation work. The Center for Peace and Conflict Studies is also the center that runs that Women, Peace, and Security series that I mentioned earlier that had Lema Bowie speak. You said you had a list.
Well, I guess I don't know. I listened to every single thing you said. I read what's on the website but these centers, do the students have to declare something? Is there a contact for each one? Is it a?
Oh, there's definitely a contact on the website. They can just reach out to the director of the center and let them know they're interested. And it really depends on what projects the center has at any moment, you know, whether they need a student. The students, the centers have some students assigned to them. Those would be our research assistants at the graduate level. But a lot of the centers have, you know, other functions other than, and quite frankly, if you're looking for activities for your son to get involved in as an undergrad, the one that's very related to our centers that I just want to highlight again is Diplo Lab. You know, that's something where there's a call every, I don't know if it's every semester. I know it's every year for students that are interested in getting trained for Diplo Lab. And like I said, we'd like to provide more funding in the future. It's very limited now. But that's a great way to get research skills. And once the student has those research skills, then they may be even more attractive to the various centers because they, you know, they have those skills. So that's something else to that's kind of in the same category of activity.
Thank you.
And he's a freshman, right? I think there's a call. Is he already in the leadership program?
No. He's just been involved in those. Oh, go ahead.
Maybe Dean Halpin's where she can type if I'm right, but I'm pretty sure there's a call right now for open slots in the leadership program for rising sophomores. If I have that wrong, Dean Halpin will certainly correct me in the chat. But I'm pretty sure there is a call in eNews right now for open slots for rising sophomores in the leadership program.
Okay.
Rising somethings. It might not be sophomores, but yeah, I hope I'm right. Yeah.
All right. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say, since I'll just hijack this whole thing. My son is the quiet freshman. He has a life on campus, enjoys his friends, all that stuff, but he's not raising his hand for a lot of things. And I don't know if that's just his personality. In high school, it was a little different. So I just want, you know, to know the lay of the land so I can say, hey, how about this? Diplo Lab, how about that? You know, and I don't know what we could do to get kids to, including mine, to step out a little more, you know, and
yeah, I mean, it could be partly the effect of, you know, COVID. I mean, the students, you know, current freshmen finished high school and started college in a non-traditional format. And that's tough. You know, when I think that, you know, I went to my first in-person conference last week in Madrid. And this is a group, this is the deans of all the professional schools in the United States and around the world. And, you know, pre-COVID, you know, I'd been to this meeting a couple times. I knew enough people. It's not like I didn't know anybody, but then it was virtual for a cycle for a year and a half. And it was kind of interesting because for a lot of us, it was our first international trip, not for all of the deans, but for a number of the deans, it was their first international trip. And it was kind of interesting day one, you know, kind of getting back into making small talk and taking advantage of breaks and working the room and networking and all of those things, you know. So I'm not surprised that students need an extra, you know, starting colleges would be, you know, a little overwhelming or intimidating in the best of circumstances. And to do it when you're coming out of finishing high school under COVID and starting college with, you know, Seton Hall was wearing masks indoors till early March. That's different. It makes it hard to meet people. It makes it harder for me to learn students' names. It drives me nuts. I don't learn names well when students are masked. It's terrible, but it is what it is. So, yeah, the more that he gets comfortable, you know your son better than anybody. You know, just the more you can push him, we'll be there with open arms to have ideas to suggest. And Dean Halpin did confirm in the chat that there is a call right now for freshmen who are rising sophomores that might be interested in getting involved in the leadership program. It's in e-news, and if he has any trouble finding it or has any questions, Dean Halpin runs a great program, and there'd be some ways that he can see the results of the work. I mean, there's a group, like I said, we have a group of, I think it's 5 of our upper class leadership students who are doing a training session for fellow students this Friday. I'm sorry, I don't know exactly how many are attending, but I do know I had to sign all the certificates, and it wasn't a small number. My fingers can tell you it was not a small number. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Those are some of the first certificates I've signed by hand in a while. You know, everything was an electronic signature for a while. So we're all relearning these skills we had.
See that Dina has raised her hand. If you want to unmute yourself.
Yes, hi. I'm kind of in the same boat as Nicole, where my son's a freshman as well, and he's participated in the Global Current, but he hasn't, you know, really done a lot of other stuff. But I know they meet with their advisors, like for advice with scheduling their classes for next year. But to the same point you were talking, I feel like mine can also use that little bit of nudge, or at least just to know what's out there in terms of Diplo Lab or leadership programs. I'm not sure he's even aware of that. Is that something they get when they also meet with their advisors, or is it just purely for scheduling classes?
The advising that happened earlier this month tends to be very focused on registering for classes because that's what's happening right now. So that really is what I would call advising. I think what you're talking about is more mentoring. And what we like to do is handle the advising, the housekeeping, course registration stuff as efficiently as possible. So that way students can develop mentoring relationships with their faculty. And that can happen in a variety of different ways. Some it happens when a student has a particular professor in class, and they bond with them well. And that could just be going by office hours. I will tell you that students are typically reluctant to go by office hours. There is a reason why faculty are required to have office hours. And you may hear that you may hear these like stereotypes that faculty aren't, faculty teach and then they want to leave. We at the School of Diplomacy are a professional school of international affairs, 14 miles from the Center of International Diplomacy. We can be picky about the faculty we hire. Okay, the faculty we hire really want to be here. They want to be here because we have very accomplished students. They want to be here because we have small class sizes. They want to be here because they like the interaction with students. So please encourage them, if they ever have any questions or concerns or just want to chat about things like that, to go by and see their professors. The other thing I will say is that upper class students are also a great source of information. As you probably saw at the various open houses and stuff through the recruitment process, whether you attended them virtually or in person. Talking to upper class students that they know. I know there was a mentoring program for incoming freshmen. He might have signed up for that. I don't know. It was pretty good participation, but not 100%. Some of those mentoring relationships developed more fully than others, just as you can imagine. But reconnecting with that mentor may be a way to get some ideas, kind of to, have a few ideas before you leave for summer kind of thing. And if there's any trouble at all, just come by the School of Diplomacy. Dean Halpin, who's on, listening in, myself, Dean San Gimino, Dean Ruby, Dr. Edwards, our department chair. We're all eager to, if we're not free that moment, we'll certainly set up a time to meet with him and give him some suggestions. Yeah. we want to make sure they're healthily involved. We also want to make sure they don't get overcommitted. You know, it's a fine balance. You know. And we'll help with that conversation too, by the way. If you ever think that's happening with your son or daughter, we'll be happy to help with the, hey, let's take a moment and prioritize things kind of conversation. Yeah.
Any other questions or concerns?
Great job. Good meeting. Thank you for having it.
Yes. Definitely.
Just in case you don't have it, you probably already do. I'm going to put my email in the chat right now. Because if you're like me, you'll think of something tomorrow, this weekend, you know, whenever, and you can just shoot me an email. And if I don't know the answer, certainly a member of our team does.
Well, I just want to thank Dean Smith. As you can see, his devotion to the school and to the university by just sharing all this information with you and answering all your questions. Thank you, Dean Smith, for sharing your knowledge and your time with us this evening. And again, to all our parents, if you want to support the school diplomacy, you can do so during Seton Hall Giving Day. As you can see, I put in the chat that we're halfway there in regards to reaching our goal. But if you really want to support the School of Diplomacy, please feel free to make a donation to the School of Diplomacy if you haven't done so already. It really will support our students and all the endeavors that.
And I'm doing a matching gift. It'll go out tomorrow morning to all the alumni. You might not see it as parents, but if we get 50 donors to the School of Diplomacy, I'm giving a gift also. I mean, I would give a gift anyway, but I'll do one just for tomorrow's, just for today and tomorrow's donations. If we can get to 50 donors to the School of Diplomacy, I'll do $1,000.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Dean Smith. That should.
And all of those donations will go to support our endowment, which supports student scholarships.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining this evening. We hope to see you soon. And have a great evening, and go Pirates. Thank you again, Dean Smith, and have a great evening as well.
Thank you all.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah,
have a
thank
good
you,
night.
Sandra, for organizing this.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime. Take care, everyone.